Hey gals and guys, this is the human behind Armoured Brownies and I make monsters and cosplay prosthetics. I thought it would be cool to share with you how I do it. This prosthetic sculpt is TwoFace from Batman, the animated series, and was made for somebody active on my Facebook group. I tried to break up my sculpts into stages, the first being the foundation, to give a nice surface to work on. I use wet, water-based clay, so getting things moist and mushing it together works just well, but without it, anything we do in the future would just slip off the waterproof polystyrene head. The armature we're sculpting on is a cheap polystyrene head from eBay. They're cheap, reusable and disposable and great for casual work. We just have to account for the minor size differences in that head and a normal human head. Now that we have a good base for our sculpt, we can start to build up the features. This is where lots of reference images are invaluable, and not just of the subject. For example, this character is from a cartoon, so there aren't too many detailed shots from different angles, so I searched online for noses, ear, cheekbones, just to make sure I had the basic human anatomy correct, and it all looked realistic. This is also the stage where we worry about making sure everything is symmetrical. Though that could easily be an entire stage of its own, as it can take a long time, but for our guy here, since he's only half a face sculpt, it doesn't matter beyond making sure the eyes, lips and ears line up. Now that we have the recognisable face of Harvey and are happy that everything looks believable, we can start adding details. Here we start building on the anatomy, adding the important details to things like the ears, and this was a challenge. I've never sculpted an ear before and turns out they're really weird, especially if you stare at them for too long. This is what most people think of when they think of sculpting, using lots of tools to carve out shapes and making this pile of mud look like a thing. But rushing into this stage is an easy way to make the finished item look wonky. A nice trick to make sure your sculpt is looking in proportion is to take photos of it. Seeing it on a computer screen from a few angles and not just how you've been staring at it for the last few hours really helps. You can see I have a lot of water around on my desk, a small pot of it for dipping my fingers and tools in, and a spray bottle for wetting the sculpt itself. This is incredibly useful for working with wet clay since it's water based. Wet has a great property that if you work on it whilst it's wet, it'll smooth down really easily, but then if you let it dry off for a while, you'll get a more solid surface that you can more effectively put details in with your tools. But don't let it dry off for too long, as it'll start to crack depending on the heat of the room. Too long can be as long as overnight. Maybe in a future video I'll go into more detail about specifically working with wet clay, how to make it last, and any little tricks and tips I've learnt if any of you are interested. Strangely, I don't see texturing as being part of the detailing stage, as it often takes as long as any other part of the sculpt, uses a different set of tools and sponges, and often needs you to wait for different portions of its dry and come back later to achieve the desired effect. However, for Harvey here, all that was needed was a bit of hair texturing on the eyebrow, some pores and dimples to tie the skin together, and the texture of the lips. Oh, and smoothing his teeth out with a lot of water. And that's basically everything I think of for this one. Please give me any feedback on this if you've enjoyed it, if you think it could be better, how Time Lapse came out, or if you really want more information. I was pretty happy with how the character came out in the end, and maybe soon we'll see this mask painted up and put to good use on an actual costume. I'm afraid I don't have any footage of the mould making or a completed prosthetics. I haven't gotten around to that yet, but hopefully sometime soon in the future. If you want to follow my work, visit my Facebook page or sub to this channel and let me know. If you have any questions about your own costumes, don't hesitate to ask. Thanks!